That's not a real ID.
So you're flying
Yep, DPW to Istanbul.
Hello.
I'm not saying I never will. I just have no ambition, no desire, no.
Figuring out how to make sure my boss.
Oh, we get a map.
Kind of right. Challenge.
Kind of extensive.
Oh, I was going to say,
Well, I just saw a thumbs up, so that tells me that we are live. And I would like to call to order the May 7, 2025 regular meeting of the Environmental Commission of the Charter Township of Meridian. I don't know if we, does staff want to do a roll call? Have you guys got a roster and run us through? Please.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. We'll start with a roll call here as Bill introduced. So I'll just kind of go through the list. Start with Commissioner Batten. Here. Commissioner Belle. Here. Commissioner Fraser.
Here.
Commissioner Lee, I think is absent actually.
She notified us of her absence this evening.
Got it. Commissioner Sarver. Here. Commissioner Mixachek. Did I say that right?
Yes.
All right. And Commissioner Peterson. Here. And then Chair Bill McConnell.
Present.
And then our trustee Lenz. Here. Okay. And then for staff, we have Dan Opsimer and myself, Jack Hughes.
And an incognito staff member we won't introduce. Thank you very much. We'll move to item 3 on our agenda. It's our pleasure tonight to have a presentation from Food Rescue US, Lansing Communities. As always, we have our presentations precede our formal agenda just so that they can be up the top of the recording and get us off to a nice start. Very pleased to welcome former Commissioner Val Lafferty, Environmental Commissioner, and Gabby Myers. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to your presentation.
Yes, thank you for allowing us to come and present to you. So Gabi and I, just to step back, you know, a bunch of us started to work on food waste or organic waste management in different formats over the past 5 years. It did result in the market, which is a wonderful thing, and Gabi and I did the food scrap collection and built that up at the market. We don't know where that's at now, but we put our attention solely on this food rescue when we got ability to use a free app because we affiliated with a national nonprofit. And we wanted to rescue food year-round, not just during market periods, recognizing the need and so forth. So Food Rescue US is a model for perishable foods. And you've probably always heard that there's so much waste because the logistics are so difficult for perishable foods. And this kind of answers that. So just a couple of quick things on hunger. I mean, I don't think we need to dwell on that. You know that there's a lot of hunger, a lot of food insecurity, and it's growing. It's not stopping. Actually, when food banks started 30 or 40 years ago, their mission was to end hunger. So, you know, we need to look at things a little differently, and I know a lot of people are. Food waste is still predominant. It's true that they're making a lot of headway in terms of grocery stores, I understand. But there's still a lot of waste, and there's a lot of commercial food providers, so there's still a long way to go. So what I hope to, I heard you're supposed to say what you wanted to pass on and then do it and then say it again. So this is it. Just the awareness of that you need the logistics in place in order to avoid waste. And there's more and more of our agencies that want better food for their clients or their guests because they're getting a lot of shelf-stable stuff or processed food, and they know that they need the fresh food that's more nutritious. So it seems like everybody's saying that. And so we hope one outcome is the more that you know about us, that you'll pass it on, and perhaps that will help get more food donors for us, which we need. So you're actually partnering with us in Well, I don't know formally, but it's pretty loose. There was an opportunity to, with Eagle next cycle, to put an application in. And we just found out we were accepted into that. And part of the mission on that is that to work together as communities to just build up awareness of it. And what we think we've developed is something that's so stable and reliable that really it should be talked about as infrastructure or the front end of your material management plan. We'll show you some slides on here. That's it. It's the reducer in that plan, and what we all want is infrastructure and a healthy regenerative food system, right? That's the goal. Do you want to explain how we work?
Sure. So how we work is we find food donors. We go to grocery stores. We have a couple of restaurants that will give us food. The beauty of our system is that we have a lot of individual volunteers, private volunteers. They come with their own cars. They go to the food donors, they pick up the food, and they take it immediately to a receiving agency that Val and I identify, or people tell us where there are receiving agencies. And the receiving agencies are food kitchens, there are soup kitchens, there are food banks, there are homeless shelters, wherever people say they need food, and if they are a nonprofit organization, we don't give food to individuals. What we think is so beautiful is that the volunteer will show up at 9 o'clock at Target. They know exactly where they have to take the food. We never know what food we'll get, but they load it into their car, and usually within an hour it's at the receiving agency, and often within another hour it's actually distributed. So there is no storage needed. We don't need to have a cool system. None of that is needed. So it's very immediate. It's very satisfying for the volunteers, and it helps to get the perishables from the grocery stores directly to the receiving agencies. And there is a lot of need for fresh produce, dairy, such things.
This is a couple of pictures. We have a lot of rescuers that go with their mom or their husband or their grandson or friends, or do it themselves. I mean, I think it's, I guess the thing is that people really feel good about this. They're actually doing something. So this would be a typical rescue, and this is our friend Dave at Southside Community Kitchen. Happens to be a community kitchen which has a little different needs than a food pantry does, and different from shelter facilities, which is another category that we serve. So this app that we have, we plug in all the information about what door to go to, what time, and where you go, what the person's name is, all that sort of thing. And so volunteers have the app on their smartphone, and if they know that they have time on Wednesday and there's a Wednesday rescue available, they'll click it and claim it, and then they get all the information where they have to go. And then right after that, they close it out by saying how many pounds, it's an estimate of they rescued. There's some categories, like we try to distinguish between produce. The perishables, of course, are produce, dairy, baked goods, and meats. And they can be fresh or frozen. And when we take on new receiving agencies, we find out, when they're open, and how much cooling facilities they have and how much freezing facilities have. So that's all goes into how we match it. And really, I think the transit time is more like 20 minutes, really. I mean, it could take an hour to, once it's the store like Target rolls it out, and then, we separate it and that sort of thing. But, so it's pretty immediate. So you want to tell about our current?
Yeah, so we have about 110 volunteers. We actually had to stop it for a while because we had so many volunteers who wanted to do actual rescues, but we need more food. And so the more food we have, the more our volunteers can run the runs. We have about 41 registered food donors. Not all of them give us a lot of food. So some are just our star donors, and others, we get like from a restaurant who will get some frozen rice and frozen mashed potatoes, but all of this we'll still take. We never say no. And then we have about 36 receiving agencies. And again, we are constantly asked or told about groups that give out food, and can we please give them more? Or our receiving agencies say, hey, we want more, we want more, we want more, how that is. So in the last 1.5 years, you can see this for yourself, we have had 1,800 rescues, deliveries, 300,000 pounds of food rescued, which is unbelievable if you think about it, because all of this would have been thrown away if we weren't there. The carbon dioxide offset is humongous, and we're saving a lot of gallons of water, which...
Yeah, the app keeps all these statistics, so a lot of places want, measurements, and so you can get anything you want by asking it. So one thing, I don't know if you read the article in Washington Post last year, but it talked about these states that tried to ban food waste, and really none of them were very successful. Over the years, there's several that have passed laws to do that. Science Magazine, I guess, I don't know, did the research, and Washington Post wrote the article on it. And they studied the 5 states that had bans for the longest time, and only one marginally made their goals, and that was because in that mix, to do what you need to do, you need to retain the food scraps and compost them, or hopefully source reduce on the front end and not waste stuff, but give it to people that are hungry. But of the 5, only one was marginally successful, and that's because they happened to have this program where they had more landfills. So the point here is that you have to have the infrastructure for this whole thing, otherwise it doesn't work. If restaurants are told not to do it, it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this then? So it has to have the whole thing. So that's why we're trying to promote the fact that, this can be a durable system using volunteers to whatever extent. Ours is all volunteer, our site. There are other sites that there's also other apps out there too. Other apps or other sites where maybe the site directors take a stipend and they have to do fundraising and the whole thing. But we have so many quality volunteers. I mean, it'll blow your mind, really. They're so capable. They're so interested and focused on it. They seem to get so much out of it that I think, that, like so often, people are just waiting for someone to sort of organize them or connect the dots so they can, do their thing and try to help. So I don't know. This is a crazy thing that I put together. So this last year, EPA and FDA and USDA all got together and said, the old pyramid is out, but the new one is here. This just has EPA on it. But first step on having a healthy system or on the food waste scale, if you will, is not to waste to begin with. We all know that, to source reduce. So, and so on the state level, the material management plans, this is from a state site, the first step is to reduce. So, take it, those are volunteers with their hands up and with the hearts. There's just a lot of people that want to do this. And I think that what we've proved in the 1.5 years, we've never missed a rescue, all those rescues that we've done. We have multiple rescues from the larger stores like Trader Joe's, and we do Whole Foods and all of the Target markets. There's 4 of them, and they're so generous. We have restaurants and bakeries and a lot of one-offs. And then Aldi's has started to work with us. They're not supposed to. They're only supposed to work with the Greater Lansing Food Bank, I guess. But here I am advertising.
I think this should be cut from the tape. This is not official.
Yeah, they're asked, like today we rescued 185 gallons of milk. The Greater Lansing Food Bank was asked if they wanted it. But it was kind of through the back door, and they were ready to throw it away. But because we've been pestering so long, says, okay, you want it? This is what's happened. We ask people if they want it. They don't want it. We have to throw it away. We feel really bad about it. So marshaled the volunteers, and it was like 5 carloads, picked it up, that and a truckload of potatoes, like 20-pound bags. The whole back of the truck was full. And it was no problem. I mean, people were the agencies that got it were just really happy to get it. So anyway, I don't know. So I'm thinking of it as infrastructure, healthy residents, makes a happy community, all that kind of stuff. And And it's easy on the budget. I'm not saying that everybody can put together and all volunteer, or that it lasts forever, but, we really should be used. This is just a quick shot of some of the agencies that we serve, and I'm sure you know a lot of them. There's several in your township, by the way. Okemos Community Church is, the food bank is a huge one. We work a little bit with Hazlitt Food Pantry, the food pantry. A lot of commercial donors. I'm trying to think, I'm sure there's more, they're not coming to mind here. So anyway, that's the takeaways that we're trying to, we wonder if the township, for example, would think of us as a partner. I don't know. We have goals that are aligned. And we've also asked this, the East Lansing and Lansing, we're doing the same with them. We know all the players there, right? Lori Welsh and Cliff Walls, and they all want this. So it's kind of, I don't know that it's more of a look, I guess. It's more just showing that there's unity, and hopefully it will just build the message that, if we just each do a little bit, we can make a difference. And yeah.
And I think we all understand that there is food waste. We all want the food to go to people who need it. I think there is no question about that. It's just about overcoming bureaucracy in terms of the states and the townships and whatnot. And then also at the grocery stores. And I don't know how that can be influenced, but it's not that easy. There are, for example, and I'll finish with this, the Dollar Tree stores in town, they throw all their food away that they can sell. And I contacted their sustainability email, and you never hear anything back. And the managers say to us, we have this food waste, we want to give it to you. I'll get back to you next week. And when you go back, they say, sorry, I'm not allowed.
Yeah.
So they all throw it away.
Well,
It's sad.
I think we'll get there. I mean, the stores like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, they're like all about it. I mean, they just want to do all the right things. And other stores are still concerned. They say things like, yeah, but I might get sued if I give away food. Well, there's a law that was revamped again just last year to make it even more protective. There's, you're indemnified on a federal level. It's a federal law that if you're giving food in good faith, you think it's good, and you give it to the next person, they give it to the next, it goes to an agency, then you're protected. I mean, and the purpose of that is so you don't waste, right? So people don't aren't fearful of that. So I think a lot of it is just we're all learning, and stores are all different at different stages, just like people are. And so anyway, your support would be very warmly welcomed.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions?
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Any questions from the commission? I've got a little list I can kick off with, but if anybody else has got some other ones.
I just have one question.
Go.
Of the list of stores, you didn't mention Myers.
Yeah, I know. We want to, I mean, they thought they could, and they just told us they can't. Their management is telling them they can only work with the Greater Lansing Food Bank. So the large Krogers, these are long-term corporate relationships. And I don't know. And basically what the perishables are bits compared to, because they do wonderful work. There's no question about it. They move so much food. But it's largely shelf-stable food. And it's also, they deliver once or twice a month, I think, to the agencies. And we go, it depends on the agency, but some of them we're at 4 times a week, bringing them stuff. It's carloads full, not trucks and pallets full, so it's a lot smaller, but that means they can use it right away too, or they have cooling facilities for it. So unfortunately not, but the Target store is so generous to us. And
I think Meyer does a good job in reducing their food waste, however they do it. The problem we see is if there are long-term partnership with the Lansing Food Bank, and the food bank, we think, is not on top of things like they used to be. maybe that is unfair, but we try to work with them because they don't have enough drivers to go to every little pickup. So very often we get a phone call from a grocery store and they say, well, the food bank didn't come today. Can you come and pick it up? But when we go to the food bank and say, why don't you work with us and let us know which of these rescues are just not big enough for you, it's not worth sending a driver. They don't take eggs, fresh produce, dairy from Aldi, but Aldi is exclusively working with the Greater Lansing Food Bank. So every day, a cartload of groceries is thrown away because the Greater Lansing Food Bank won't take it. And when we say to the Greater Lansing Food Bank, why don't you work with us? We'll take the stuff that you don't want. They stall. They don't talk to us. We have tried really hard.
I mean, they've been around for a while. I think
They're
there's a lot
totally
of,
blocking us.
there's budgetary problems. I mean, they have a much more complicated life than we do. There's no question.
But we know a
So-
lot of their problems, but they don't acknowledge them. They say they have never missed a rescue, and we're like, that's not true.
So just a little context, the Greater Lansing Food Bank is a Feeding America, under Feeding America, and our state everywhere is divided up by, the farm bill is connected to that, to all the surplus products and so forth. So somebody divided up the whole United States into food banks. In Michigan, there's 7. They're under the Feeding America would be the umbrella, and it's Greater Lansing Food Bank here, but it's called Harvest or whatever. I mean, there's names for all the other ones. And they're all different. One might be one county, one might be, 15 counties, I think. So it's really big. And Greater Lansing Food Bank has a challenge because their counties are all stacked right up and down. It's not like you can spread out in a circle and make it a little more economical. But anyway, it's just
They're a little difficult.
Yeah.
Other questions? Please, go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you for this presentation. Really exciting work to see so much diverted from landfills. That's a passion of mine, so I appreciate all the work that you do, and amazing numbers. Really, the metrics speak volumes. A few questions, kind of piggybacking over here. This question: Have you partnered with superstores like Costco, Sam's Club, all
Yeah,
those?
they're
yes.
part of the, I think it's legacy stuff. I mean, it's way at a corporate level, way higher than we can reach, these agreements are made long ago,
And what I'm wondering, because I'm hearing some of your barriers, do you have anything, educational outreach material that you could give them that's vetted, that has the federal guidelines in there, the laws, things that, because
Yeah.
they might say, oh, well, we hear what you're saying, but, I'm just curious to know if you have that material developed.
We do for those people that are open and receptive to it. Yeah, we can share all that information. But I think when push comes to shove, when they ask their manager, it's not the way that, I don't know. It might be something to do with tax consequences too, because there is a benefit for giving away food. But we also keep track of metrics, so we would also be able to do that. It's just, I guess where we're going at, what we're saying is a small amount of food, but it's the perishable food that needs to be moved quickly. It seems like we should be able to coexist. There's no doubt that they do a whole lot more, and they do such good. They're, and dedicated people. I'm sure.
Yeah,
So
I think so too.
That's it. Yeah.
And I've talked to the people at Costco, again, Greater Lansing Food Bank is their first bank. I've also thought if they would agree to work with us, I don't think we could handle it, because if they have, let's say, a reject of a truckload of watermelons, I mean, how many volunteers are we going to send, right? So we know what we can handle, and I think Costco would pretty soon overwhelm us. And I think overall, when we go to the grocery stores, there is a very good sense of not to throw food just in the trash. I mean, many of them have a system where they at least put things for composting. They work with the Greater Lansing Food Bank. Yes, there is still waste. But overall, it is pretty reassuring that they all try. It's just sometimes like the smaller ones, like the Aldi. We would love to get to Aldi's because we have 4 Aldi stores in the greater Lansing area, and the managers all want to give it to us, and they're not allowed to. But we keep, poking them. Eventually, we'll get them.
Yeah, I think we could scale up quicker maybe than Gabi does if we got a truckload or something. I think there's enough people there. But there's also now a food rescue site, and a new one that affiliated in Traverse City. It's Food Rescue of Northern, whatever. They, however, are buying the software, so they're already a nonprofit, and they're supplementing. And he's the one that calls that stuff the bits, because they have all the agriculture up there, so they have truckloads of stuff that they get. They do an amazing job. But a lot of the perishables, the dairy and the meats and stuff, the smaller amounts, which are high value, he wants to add a volunteer operation that will supplement that. Grand Rapids is doing that, or Holland is doing it. It's called Food Rescue Hero. That's a different app. It's similar, but different. I don't know. And then we also have Detroit, that's been there for 6 years. Detroit Food Rescue, that covers Southeast Michigan, and they just, it's a whole different picture in Detroit. They have such huge volumes of food and so much need. So anyway, it's interesting, and there's more coalitions happening. It's a very dynamic area of people within the state that have an interest in food rescue banding together to share information. So there's a lot of collaboration, maybe not fully right now, but on the cusp of it. So.
Well, thank you again for coming to present to us. It's great work. I might leave you with just a couple of thoughts. One is on the pinch point of donors being concerned about soot. I wonder if there's a role for our county health inspectors to take on a bit more of an outreach and education role than simply the inspections. I mean, they keep us safe by making sure that the restaurants and the grocery stores are handling our food safely. They're the ones who presumably would be the long arm of the law should someone eventually get ill. If they can play a role in reassuring the potential donors that that's not a valid risk, that might be a way to go. And I can also imagine approaching potentially Home TV to see if they're interested in producing a segment. It's great to see the photographs of the volunteers and things, but short video and interviews can be even more impactful in getting people's attention and changing the conversation.
Yeah,
So thank you again, and we keep up the good work. Keep spreading the word. And I appreciate you not mentioning the bureaucracy at Michigan State University, which I'm deeply enmeshed in and all of that. Item 4 on our agenda is citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. Is there any member of the public? I believe I see 2 staff members and our 2 volunteers. So if there are no citizens wishing to make public remarks, communications, I don't believe we have any communications this evening. So we'll move to approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to make any changes, additions, deletions, corrections to the agenda as circulated? Going once. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
just had a question. I know last time we went through the green grants, and I believe there was a couple of things that were outstanding, and I didn't know if we were going to consider those at this meeting.
I think I just heard a motion to amend the agenda to add an item 9B on green grants. Is that?
Sure.
And if I could also add under 10B liaisons, a township board update.
So if I might, Mr. Chair, I was planning on covering the green grants under the township staff report, if you'd like this evening. The Green Grant Committee held a meeting with the Cornell Woods HOA today, so we're going to update you on that. And then last Thursday, shortly before we published your packet, we had a late application that puts us over the 20,000, but I'd be happy to touch on that in greater detail under the township staff report, or if you wish to add an agenda item, we can cover it under that item under the agenda as well.
All right, under 10A then. That way we don't have to do any amendments except just making sure that we get township board update under liaison reports.
And can I raise one other issue?
You may.
I think we also talked about last time about electing a chair and vice chair
Well, we
going
did.
forward.
We did.
And
Yeah, we can slip that under, what, unfinished business? You're just determined to get an item 9B on our agenda this evening, yeah?
I think I just did.
Yeah, I think you just did. Any other changes, suggestions, or objections to those changes? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted as amended without objection. Moving to approval of the minutes. I understand there are a couple of typos found in the minutes. Have those been communicated to staff?
Yes.
Could you just briefly tell us what item without getting into the details?
Yeah, two transcription errors were found that were corrected.
Minor typos.
Minor typos, yep, the name of the Red Cedar River and the name of the YMCA.
Super. Any further corrections to the minutes? Without objection, the minutes are adopted as amended. And that takes us then to new business wetland use permit 2501. Wow, this is exciting. It's been a while since we saw one of these. Please, staff, would you like to introduce this item?
Sure.
And please remind us of your name and your role in the township.
Yeah, my name's Casey Hart. I work in the engineering department at the township. So, Jack, if you can go to page 53, that should be our overall site plan. Okay, so I'm gonna go over our proposed sanctuary pathway project. So we are proposing a 7-foot wide concrete pathway. It's gonna be off-road, so it's going through an undeveloped area, and it's going to be non-motorized. So just, walking and biking will be allowed on the pathway. To the north, we've got the Okemos Reserve neighborhood, and on the south side is the sanctuary subdivision. So it's kind of providing a direct linkage between those two subdivisions. On the south side, it connects right into the Robbins Way cul-de-sac. There's an existing pathway network located on that cul-de-sac, so we'll be tying into there. And then it runs north. It does cross over the Smith Consolidated Drain and continues north. And on that north-south leg there is all located on Meridian Township's parcel. So then after we get past the north-south leg, it turns to the west and northeast, and it eventually ties into the existing Okemos Hartrick Trail. So again, it's providing a great linkage to our existing pathway networks. However, with this project, we do have some wetland impacts. So, Jack, if you want to go to page 66 of the packet, we are going to impact 0.03 acres of wetlands, and maybe you can zoom into that area, yeah. So on this exhibit in red that delineates the area that we are going to be impacting, and again, this is right at where we're crossing the Smith Consolidated Drain. So what we're doing here is we're going to be filling in the wetland. We're going to be constructing a 36-inch concrete culvert that will convey the water underneath the pathway and keep the existing drainage pattern of the drain. And in order to meet the township's, mitigation ordinances, we're going to be making up for this loss in another pathways wetland mitigation area. So Jack, if you want to flip to the next sheet. So this is a previous pathway project that we did. It's the MSU to Lake Lansing Phase 2 portion of that pathway. The blue is just, a general depiction of where that pathway was constructed. And then I've got a call out of where we performed previous wetland mitigation. And then if you could go to the next sheet. This is just a zoomed in version of the plan view of the wetland mitigation. So on the left-hand side, you can see the blue dash. That's an existing wetland, and we excavated some upland area, which is the blue hatch. So we expanded that wetland by 0.14 acres, and that's where we're going to be making up for the wetland impacts on the sanctuary pathway. So I think with that overview, I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he'll give his input on the project.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim Schmidt. I'm currently the Community Planning and Development Director for the township. And so wetland use permits come through my department. This one is a little unusual, which is why I'm here this evening to sort of walk you through it. Typically, the process would be, comes to us, we verify, goes to our wetland consultant, first and foremost for confirmation of the delineation that we agree with everything, and then it would come to the Environmental Commission for a recommendation of the Planning Commission. This actually falls under an exception in the ordinance because it does not require a formal site plan because there's a few different reasons, but most notably, the ordinance does not require the Planning Commission to weigh in if it's not associated with a project that the Planning Commission would otherwise weigh in on. So because this is its own standalone project that would not otherwise go to the Planning Commission, it goes through an administrative process. And so it comes to me, we again verify it with our consultants, which was relatively straightforward, and then come to the Environmental Commission for their feedback. Then I hold a public hearing, as we do with, we used to do with site plans after the Planning Commission had held their normal public hearing. And we would then send it to Eagle. This has already been to Eagle because we wanted to make sure, right, that the state was going to sign off before we went any further. And so we already have Eagle sign off in the packet. Eagle, for a project of this nature, would not require mitigation, but obviously our ordinance does. And so that's why I had discussed with Casey previously if she could go through sort of how we mitigated on this site. And so we've certainly met our mitigation requirements. Just briefly, what you're looking at is essentially, there's actually two impacts that we take into account here on this project. One, you have the impact, the actual fill impact, which is 0.03 acres, which is very, very small amount. And then there's also, for the shoulder of the pathway, there's an impact of 129 cubic yards. So the long and the short of it, in any circumstance, we have mitigated more than we are impacting for this project. So staff has reviewed it at this point and have raised no major concerns. Our consultants did review it, and in talking to them, they're like, yeah, you have to cross it somewhere, and this is probably the best place for you to cross it if you're going to build this path. We certainly, and to Casey's credit, we were able to avoid any wetlands on the consumer's energy site, which is where, when we talked about this originally, that's what we thought the problem was going to be, was the consumer's energy wetland. Luckily, Casey was able to largely get around that. And so from staff's perspective, it does meet the 11 criteria in our ordinance to grant a permit. And, we would recommend the issuance of it subject to obviously the mitigation, which we've discussed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the permitting, and I know Casey would be happy to answer any questions about the design if you have any.
If I could take you back one step higher, since we have several new commissioners with us who haven't seen wetland use permits previously, if you could just give us the kind of chapter and verse on what the state regulates and how the township regulates beyond the state.
So the state's going to regulate anything 2 acres and greater, or if it's within a certain distance of a water feature. Now that sometimes changes whether it's a lake or a stream or a drain, but the general rule is if you're within 500 feet of a water feature, you're probably regulated by the state. I have seen situations where if it's actually like truly a man-made drain, it's not as strictly enforced because it's technically navigable waters. And there was a Supreme Court case last year that discussed what the actual definition of navigable waters is. So there is some change happening in that area right now. But the general rule is if you're within 500 feet of a water body or you're over 2 acres, you're regulated by the state. Generally, we regulate any wetland of any size. Now, a couple of exceptions to that as well, obviously. Certainly, there have been situations, and we will probably run into one this coming year, given some of the conversations I've had with developers, that wetland is of such poor quality or clearly man-made that it's deemed to be non-essential, that would be one situation where it would not require mitigation. To get a non-essentiality determination, it has to go through a number of steps. And so 9 times out of 10, it never comes, I would say 99 times out of 100, it doesn't come into play. There have been, though. I've ran into 2 of them in my career. You know, old farmer's field where he dug a hole at some point and it filled in with cattails, and you know, it's not actually doing anything because it's draining like this 50 square foot area basically to this one spot, right? It's stuff like that. As a general rule, we don't have a lot of those around here because we have a lot of actual wetlands in the township. And so as a general rule, any wetland you touch is going to require a wetland use permit. And our policy is mitigation at a no net loss, basically. So we're 1.5, minimum 1.5 to 1 mitigation is our general standard. Again, always exceptions to those rules, but that's sort of the basic process. We also have, and we're somewhat unique in the state country with this, setbacks from wetlands and water features and things of that nature. That is considered a zoning item, not an environmental item. This is the wetland use ordinance is separate from the zoning ordinance, and it's largely due to appeals, right? Appeals for non-zoning related items are typically going to go to the board and then to circuit court. Appeals for zoning related items under state law go to the ZBA first and then to circuit court. So the township board doesn't get involved in those cases. So that's also floating around out there for wetlands as well, but you guys will never have to deal with that. That's on me, my staff.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Commissioner
I'm
Sarver.
kind of curious, Tim, you referenced the kind of, I'll call it a wetland credit from the pathway. Do we have a lot of wetland credits that are kind of available to us in the future?
We don't, and in fact, I'd probably defer to Casey here a little bit. I think we kind of knew this was coming, that we would need some space, and this was a good opportunity for us to plan ahead. There's not a lot, right? It's 0.1.
0.03, so 0.04.
No, how much do we have in the, like?
0.14.
0.14 acres, so right, you're under a tenth of an acre of impact you would be permitted. So it's little stuff like this that, you know, we're able to accommodate. If we ever hit something where we actually have to do a quarter of an acre wetland impact for a project, right? If there was another Okemos Road pathway bridge, you know, we're gonna have to find a spot because we don't have stuff like that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Could you remind us of the scope of this? Is this just the pure connection of these 2 neighborhoods and the purpose of this?
Yeah, this was part of the pathway master plan to connect up to the Hartrick Trail, the Hartrick Trail, the one that goes east-west. It's now the Ron Steichen Memorial Trail. But this drain obviously is one of the things that prevented that for a long time. And so now that we got to the sanctuary subdivision is finally finishing with their last 7 lots, this was the opportunity really, because portion of that, they're paying for a large portion of it. We own the connection to the north, able to work with consumers to make the last piece of it work. So just everything kind of fell together on this one.
So this is connectivity, so to have it be more mobile around for?
Yeah, it's much easier to get to the high school now if you're in one of those neighborhoods on the north side of the drain. You don't have to go out on Hewlett Road.
And have you talked to that neighborhood to see if there's a need, if that would be utilized if this is built?
Well, I can tell you from a run club perspective, we'd use it because we end up on Robbins Way occasionally. I'm always surprised when I'm out on the trail system throughout the township, just how many people are out randomly. Like we'll go and park at elevation and you just sort of run wherever you can and you eventually get up on the Hartrick Trail. And getting down in this neighborhood is always a bit of a challenge. So this is certainly promoting a lot of the goals of the master plan and the pathway master plan as well to, you know, stitch us together as a community.
And are there any other alternative options other than this path straight through?
No, unfortunately. So if you look at this map that Jack pulled up here, the long skinny piece where the north-south red is, we own that. And so realistically, that's the only way we're getting north. the large rectangular block in the middle that looks like it has a road in it actually does have a road in it now, and that's all platted lots. Obviously, you have a giant wetland further to the west there, and then further to the east is single-family homes. So this is our shot to get north, basically.
And how did we come to own that little sliver?
Ooh, that's a question I don't have the answer to. I don't know.
Okay, all right, it's not crucial. I do have one question about the mitigation. My recollection is that it's always preferable to mitigate in the same watershed, and I'm not clear if that criterion has been met in this case.
Yeah, I am not clear as well, so I'd have to look that up. But as Tim mentioned, this is our only pocket of wetland that we have available for mitigation. So outside of, finding another tract of land and developing that into wetland mitigation, we wouldn't have another area to mitigate. But I can check on the watershed.
Okay. And from my reading of of your plans, really the impact on wetlands is the actual location of the culvert and the areas, it's sort of the banks of the ditch.
Yes.
Of the county ditch. So if you're going to cross a county drain, you're going to have an impact in those spots at a minimum.
Yep.
And I assume the drain commissioner's office gets reeled into this at some point because somebody's doing work in their drain.
Yeah, we've already went through the approval process with them, so we have the permit and agreements in place with them as well.
So that puts us as potentially the last stick in the mud. See what I did there? See what I did there? Yeah, thank you for mentioning the pathway master plan. It would be handy to have that in future staff reports so that we can see that beautiful little red squiggly line that the GIS drew in for that little spot. And also maybe a reference to the green space plan, which we typically have in development applications, to see how that was shown there. I didn't take the time to look that up. Since it's a drain, I presume it shows as one of our priority conservation corridors. And it's also always helpful to have that pointed out in the staff report so that we can keep track of that. And also just to remind us that we have a green space plan and what it says and what it does. So.
Sorry, Jack, I'm going to take control here.
Please.
See, it's fair to ask questions of people who spend all day on the website to find stuff on the website, especially if it's in the department side.
That way around a little bit. So
There you are.
This squiggle right here, actually.
It's just such an artful squiggle. If a doctor put in stitches like that, you'd sue them. I'm giving you a hard time. Again, since folks are not, perhaps all of us familiar with this map, if you could just walk through generally the symbology, blue stuff that's here and red stuff that we'd like to be here.
Go ahead. I just don't know this as well.
Yeah, so speaking to the larger connectivity question, kind of going back one question. So as Tim pointed out, this is the connection point that we're proposing currently. The connection to the Okemos Preserve neighborhood is already there. So that alleyway that you see, the Okemos Preserve neighborhood is already connected there. So this is connecting the sanctuary. But big picture, when we look at this trail, and when I say big picture, I mean we're talking decades of planning, right? But conceptually, what township staff have come up with over the past 5 years or so is a way to loop the Lansing River Trail, the MSU River Trail, and the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail back to Dunkel and Jolly at the southern end of the Lansing River Trail. And how that would work here in Meridian Township, this is Green Road right here. This is Hazlitt Road. This is right here, this red line that goes south. This is where it would cross Grand River. This is a Consumers Energy right-of-way, same as the interurban, right? The interurban was constructed in the Consumers Energy right-of-way using the same type of lease agreement. And that right-of-way is contiguous. It runs all the way down here to Lake Park. And then we would somehow have to cross the river, so we'd be looking at a bridge. And then we would be taking the Consumers Energy right-of-way west, where we would get to Okemos Road right here. So the portion of the Hartrick-Okemos Trail or the Ronald J. Stika Trail, which is running right here, is already constructed. That would be a part of the west leg. Once you get to MSU campus here, approximately right here, the Consumers Energy right-of-way continues. It runs through the southern undeveloped portion of campus and into the city of Lansing. And so we can actually create a huge loop out of the river trails with this Consumers Energy right-of-way. So there's that larger feature. So the neighborhood to the south that hasn't connected to this, what will be a regional trail, and in some respects, it already is a regional trail. The second grant that Ingham County Trails and Parks Millage gave out paid for the overlay paving, the maintenance on this trail that we're proposing to connect the sanctuary neighborhood to. So this is going to be a very well-received project today, and some time from now, when this becomes a more robust regional trail, it'll be, if the neighborhood weren't connected to it, they would be kind of beating down our door to get connected to it at that point. But this is one of our most scenic trails too. If you haven't been on it, I would highly recommend it. It's just a very pleasant walk through nature with a lot of habitat. So we're trying to create that pedestrian connectivity for the neighborhood to the south, just like the Okemos Preserve neighborhood to the north currently enjoys. So that's just kind of a bigger, more holistic picture of the connectivity and what this small linkage will kind of yield in time.
Thank you. Further questions for staff? Well, if somebody has the agenda in front of them, they'll notice in the staff report a draft motion, usually in bold, that can be offered to state the commission's desires.
It's page 16.
16, cool.
And I would note while we're getting that up that in my experience with wetland use permits, there are usually only very minor, if any, discrepancies between the delineation done by the applicant and the delineation verified by our wetland consultant. And maybe occasionally a couple of species that the consultant spots that the applicant's consultant didn't see, but then generally they tend to be very, very common.
And I will only add, those are the ones that come forward. The ones that we deal with administratively, there tend to be a lot more of those disagreements because the homeowners try to have their consultants cut it back as much as they can so they can build a bigger backyard patio and deck, and our consultants correct them as we go along. But those are all behind the scenes.
So pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes. Yes.
Would somebody like to offer the motion that's in the packet?
Sure, I will. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Sure. I make a motion to recommend the approval of the wetland use permit number 25-01 to fill 0.03 acres and an additional 129 cubic yards of regulated wetland to construct a pedestrian bicycle pathway between Robbins Way and Elderberry Drive as part of the Sanctuary 2 subdivisions development.
I'll support.
Motion by Commissioner Peterson, support by Commissioner Mixchek. Any further discussion from the commission? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, staff, for the thorough report. Lovely project. Always nice to see our trail system expanding. It's a big hit. It gets a lot of use, and it's the right direction to be going.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Moving on then to unfinished business. Part A, Climate Sustainability Plan. We also have the staff report.
Alrighty, thanks for the introduction there, Chair McConnell. I'm gonna fly to the end of our packet here. I'm basically here to kind of bring the township proposal for some of the usage of the climate sustainability funds back to our attention. This is something we had touched on last meeting. The commission had sought a few extra details on this that we can now provide and possibly move forward with. So just a quick recap. The township board allocated 30 grand worth of funding to pursue environmental projects that are tied to the climate sustainability plan. That plan has a few goals and objectives in there. And the township is proposing the use of some of this funding to create some bioswales alongside this Marshall Park here. The township is already planning to restore and resurface some of these roads over here. And the standard option would be to create ditches along here to help mitigate some of the flooding. But with the addition or the use of some of the climate sustainability funds, the township can, instead of doing ditches, can do something a little more eco-friendly or eco-conscious here. These bioswales are essentially just, enhanced ditches, but with native plantings. They offer native habitats. They offer better drainage than traditional ditches would offer. And they're also provide a little less maintenance and watering that it would be required compared to like maintaining turf grass. This could go forward with or without the climate sustainability funding, but with the funding, we would be able to do the bioswales. And if the commission is interested, the township would then be bringing on the engineering firm, Spalding Decker, who would be able to provide us a little more in-depth look at this. But out of that 30 grand that was allocated, it was reminded to us that some of that has already been used or allocated. About $2,200 was used for the gleaning project at the farmer's market to acquire a few supplies required for that, as well as $2,800 was used for some wetland education signage. There is some further signage that has to go up yet, and the township is still looking to get an exact figure on what that would cost. We're estimating somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 there. So this brings our total expenditure of the 30 grand to $5,362 so far. That leaves us $24,637, sans another $2K or so for that last sign. And that amount of funding, that 22 grand or so, the township is looking to the Environmental Commission to provide some ideas or some thoughts on how we could use some of that funding. The township is offering this bioswale project as an example of one that could be done now or could just be kind of an idea of a way to use some of this funding. Chair McConnell mentioned that it would be good to ensure that any of these projects have a direct connection to the climate sustainability plan. So I took a little perusal in there, and looking at the very first objective of their water and green infrastructure management portion of the sustainability plan has an objective that is very wordy, so bear with me. It's to increase resiliency towards extremes of weather by continuing to upgrade green infrastructure and other best management practices to minimize stormwater runoff and flood vulnerability while retaining enough surface water to mitigate drought damage. This is one.
That is a mouthful.
That is, yeah.
Who wrote this plan?
So essentially, still boiling that down is it's looking at, ways to essentially mitigate flood damage and provide an environmental benefit. This objective even specifically mentions bioswales as an example of, how this, what this could look like. So I feel like there's a very direct connection to the first objective of their first section, or of the water and green infrastructure management portion. There is a fourth goal in the climate sustainability plan to promote the importance of water conservation. This is a bit of a stretch, but bioswales by nature require less maintenance and watering than regular grass, so I feel like there could be a connection there too as well. That this does technically conserve water, treated water specifically, water that actually costs money to produce and pump to people's houses. So I think there's an element of conservancy there to look at. So for those two, the township feels like this project would be a appropriate use of this funding and also a highly effective use of this funding, as it would severely, it would help alleviate some severe flooding issues in the area. Is there anything you'd like to mention there too, Dan?
Yeah, I'll just give one more overview. And just to give the Environmental Commission some additional context on this project, with it being an existing drain, we have existing storm drains on both sides of the lake and Columbia Street intersection there. Obviously, when we're outletting water to Lake Lansing, we want to treat that water, and natural filtration, such as a bioswale, is the optimal approach for treating that stormwater before it is discharged to the lake. Another important piece of context for those who may not be aware, Lake Lansing does not have natural streams. There's no stream bringing water in, and there's no stream taking water out. There's just a man-made dam on the west side of the lake, roughly just north of this neighborhood, actually, and that controls the lake level. So Lake Lansing is more or less a large bathtub that fills up through precipitation, and then it reaches the level of the dam and it outlets to the Pine Lake outlet. When you see Okemos Road flooding, for instance, by our new boardwalk, just north of Central Park Drive, that is stormwater runoff from in and around the lake area that was outletted over the dam. So knowing that, right, there's not a stream to bring fresh water in and to take water out, water quality is very important. So the other dynamic of this project that I thought might be of interest to the Environmental Commission is the partnership, not only in concert with the Park Commission and their role as it relates to Marshall Park, but also the Lake Lansing Advisory Board, or Lake Lansing Advisory Commission, which oversees the lake and the special assessment district that the township administers for maintaining the water quality of the lake. So I thought in that sense it could be a good project that would kind of allow the Environmental Commission to bring three bodies together to work in concert on goals that are in the climate sustainability plan. So that's just kind of the big picture thought process on why we thought this might be a project that would interest you all. And with that, we'll turn it over to you for any questions.
Just one more note real quick in there, just a quick touch back on how some of the funding has already been used. Since the last meeting, it was brought to our attention that there was a composting initiative that was started that was seeking additional funding in order to keep its momentum and keep its growth. The township has purchased 2 compost bag dispensers to aid in that, and will hopefully kind of help address that kind of growth that they're looking to have out there.
Yeah, and the other note that I would have on the composting, so we do have bags available at both sites. At the farmer's market, for instance, though, it's just a cardboard box of the compostable bags sitting next to the Kirby carts. So we do have bag dispensers. It appears that we're missing the rod that the bag rolls go on, so we do need to get in touch with the vendor to reconcile that, but we're gonna get the bags up on the wall or on a freestanding mount so that they're more visible to the public. But there were bags on site when we visited the April 3rd, the day after the previous meeting. All of the services at this point are already being covered under the park millage. So the Parks Department is paying through the parks millage for our vendor that comes and empties the compost bins and also restocking the bags. So that is already kind of a cost that has been transferred off of the climate sustainability funds. The final purchase was the bag dispensers, which we just need to reconcile some components and parts with our vendor on.
Thank you. Question?
Yeah, if I could just, to follow up on what you're just talking about, appreciate the fact that you're getting the dispensers. I think that will be a great help. One of the other components of what this body was concerned about last year was actual promotion of the food compost. And I don't know that we've necessarily addressed that yet. I don't know if perhaps the communications department could be of assistance with that. And then the follow-up question to that would be, if that is successful, it's likely that we would need additional pickups of the I'm not sure if there's 64-gallon or 96-gallon containers at the two facilities. And would the Parks Department pay for any additional costs that might be incurred for additional pickups?
Yeah, if we do experience the bins filling up, we can increase the frequency. We're often doing that with our, trash and recycling services as well. So we're always flexible in that regard, and the park millage can certainly fund any additional service that we would require if it does get popular. And we can meet and converse with our communications department and try to come up with some communications. I'm not aware of any that we've done to date. There may have been some, but if not, we can start working with them on developing some communications and put that in a future packet.
That'd be great. And I know we have two people here today in the audience that were very instrumental in this proposal, so I'm sure they would appreciate those efforts as well.
Yep.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
It's not directly tied to this proposal, but the other proposal that was submitted by the Green Team, and that was for the signage at the recycling center. And I know you made a comment that maybe that could be required of the vendor to do that, but just wondering if there's any update on that issue.
Yeah, I did not find a moment to delve into it. I have faint recollections of what the contract prescribes, because we did have to address mattress, the containers that were being used for mattresses. And at that time, we determined that it was a 50-50 cost share between the vendor that operates it and the township. So, but I do need to check back and see what exactly is detailed in that regard and what existing signage we already have on site.
Yeah, the signage on site is pretty minimal. That's why the Green Team was suggesting we really need more signage to better, to make more clear to residents what goes where to try to avoid contamination issues. And I think the total cost was only like $635 or something like that at the time. Of course, this has been about a year now, but I guess depending on what you find, I would, and I like this Marshall Park proposal, but I do feel that we'd like to see those two projects, followed through with, since they were supported by the Environmental Commission and the Township Board last year. So if we need additional funding for the signage for the recycling center, I'd like to make sure we have that available still.
And Commissioner Frazier, do you remember how the $600 figure was arrived at? Was that a quote from a vendor?
It was a quote. It was a quote that Trevor had obtained at the time. And I believe it was for 10 signs, 3 foot by 2 foot on like wire post or stakes. That could be placed in front of each recycling bin, describing to residents what they should do, what they shouldn't do, what's accepted, what's not accepted, type of thing.
Okay, so more or less like corrugated plastic type yard signs, like with the H wires that go?
Right, yep.
Okay. I do wonder about that with it being a gravel site, and it's gonna be it might be difficult to get H wires in, but we can look into that too. But that's just my initial gut reaction is H wires might not work very well with all the limestone and gravel on site. But okay, yeah, that is my bad. I completely forgot about that item. So we covered the other items in there. We will work on that and bring you back a report at the June meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Institutional memory going strong. I like it. Yeah, it's important. You don't want to lose track of stuff. Other comments, questions?
I'm
Yeah.
wondering,
Sorry.
the area within the yellow lines, would that be all bioswale, or how much of it would be bioswale? And if it's not bioswale, what's the rest of it look like? Within, well, how did you determine that yellow lines?
So that was a line that I just put on paper to kind of delineate the low-lying area in that southeast corner that wouldn't require tree removals, right? So just trying to work around existing trees. Now, when you look at the amount of storage that we need, though, we are not going to be able to store that amount of water in a swale there on the Marshall Park site. So all the more reason we have to treat water quickly, and we have to outlet and discharge it to the lake, right? Because we can only store a portion of that water. But that would all be during the design phase, where we would kind of refine exactly what the footprint of the swale is. Is there a buffer zone with other plantings? That's where we would probably do some fun meetings where we bring the engineers in. And we have them participate in environmental commission meetings. And the Environmental Commission can give, input on species, go through the design, and we can talk about all those finer details. But that was just a rough footprint of where the swale might be located. We're going to want to maximize the size of it. And again, just for point of reference, this is, I forget the address, but this is Lake Street right here. Columbia is between this Kirby cart and these bollards underwater. And right there is the front step of this home on Columbia. So the water is up against their foundation. Their front step is underwater. Just to give you context on the drainage problems, this is probably the worst drainage area in the township.
Yeah, thanks.
So as a relatively new member of the commission, I'm wondering if the township has installed bioswales elsewhere within township property of a comparable size.
Not of a comparable size, but we did do I believe it was a swale and not a wetland, and I'll see if Jack or Casey remember, but we did one over on Shaw Street, adjacent to the lake, and that was more of a demonstration project, so smaller in scale. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was a bioswale. It was just before my time. But if my memory serves, it was a bioswale. I don't know why we would have been mitigating wetland over there. Of this size, no, we haven't. But typically we don't get into the business of drainage, but now through the local road program, and also with it being our park that gets flooded, circumstances are a little bit different in this area.
So then one argument in support of this project, it would be a good demonstration of what a bioswale can accomplish.
Yeah, I think the LLAC, the Lake Lansing Advisory Committee would really hold this up as, the standard bearer for drainage around the lake. The problem in many neighborhoods around the lake is that you just don't have the acreage, right? You need space. And that's what's unique about this area. Not only do we have space, the township already owns it. And there would be other low-impact design components of this project. We would kind of have the Environmental Commission zero in on the bioswale, but we would also look to divert stormwater wherever possible. There's alleys in this neighborhood. We're going to work with our engineering firm to determine who owns those, but we can use those alleys that are on the lakefront side of Columbia to construct swales and try to intercept that water and outlet it to the lake before it gets to this low-lying area at Columbian Lake, for instance. So part of the project will also be trying to reduce the amount of storage we need in this area.
Yeah, for those not familiar with the geography of Lake Lansing, Shaw Street is on the southwest corner, and that whole neighborhood got new roads and new drains. So the project that the township did is just where Lake Lansing meets Shaw, that parking lot for the restaurants there. And then also in the Lake Lansing Park South parking lot, there was also a rain garden installed as a demonstration project. So this would be the third kind of piece of green infrastructure going into the west-southwest corner of Lake Lansing. Does that sound right?
Yep. I think actually I think that's our demonstration project. Or that's the county's.
Well, also to the left of the pathway, there was a piece done there as well. I don't think it's showing very well on this picture, but on the west side of Shaw Street, I think some of that was also changed. So further comments, thoughts, where staff are not asking for a decision this evening, more guidance. And what I'm hearing is a general level of support with some caution about reserving sufficient funds for projects that we've already approved, recommended from the available funds. Is that a fair summary? Great, thank you very much for the detailed presentation. I personally think it's a great idea, and I hope to see it come to fruition. So I think you have the commission's blessing to, authorization to plan is what we call it at MSU. You're allowed to spend some money developing a plan that we can actually get costs on. And 9B. What was 9B?
I'll elect you as chair.
Oh, criminy. Okay, well, we can do that. I'm very happy to hold elections for chair and vice chair, especially since our vice chair isn't here and can't defend herself, but I wouldn't. While I'm happy sitting in this chair, I would be really, really pleased if somebody else were interested in stepping up and taking hold of the gavel. So I'm going to open the floor for nominations.
I'm going to nominate Bill.
Okay, that's one nomination.
I'll second that.
Oh dear, please, any further nominations? Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to nominate our current vice chair, Yuman Lee, to serve in that role, just to punish her for not coming. No. Would anybody else be interested in serving as vice chair? All right, then. I hear one nomination for chair, one nomination for vice chair, and without objection, we will consider those as a slate. All in favor of electing those officials, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thanks for keeping us honest on that, Commissioner Frazier. Moving on to staff update on climate sustainability plan expenditures. I feel like we've had a fair amount of information on that topic already. But there was also another item under staff update that we were going to cover.
Yeah, that was that actually should have been redacted. That was kind of a holdover from the April 2nd agenda.
Yeah.
Apologies, last week was very busy with the Township Board's efforts to consider a millage for the senior and community center, or a senior center. So we were working at rapid pace to finish up all the packets on Friday. So for the Green Grant update, last Thursday we did get an application from the Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy. It's very similar to the 2024 Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy application pertaining to tree planting on Judy Wynn's property on Piper Road. We have requested a written update and documentation of the work that's been performed to date under the 2024 grant, and let them know that we received their application and that we would have the Green Grant Review Committee review it and consider it. So I'll be scheduling another meeting of the Green Grant Committee so that we can reconvene and discuss that late application. And then also, we met with the Cornell Woods HOA Homeowners Association today in the field on the site that they're proposing. They accepted they responded in the affirmative, or yes, to all of our questions pertaining to the school and to the educational signage. They are reluctant to do a bioswale, and we were out there today after the rain event yesterday. It was not a significant rain event yesterday, but it did give an indication as to, where stormwater might pond. There wasn't any, ponding stormwater on site that we could identify. The concurrence seemed to be that from the committee that we would revisit their application when we can reconvene and meet as to whether or not we award additional funding, because the Environmental Commission did approve them for their minimum request of $5,000, and their maximum, their official request was $7,000. We also discussed, regardless of whether or not they receive additional funding above and beyond the initial $5,000, that they would scale their native planting garden relative to the cost of the signage, right? So if they need to add a sign, and that sign is $600, they'll kind of scale the native planting garden back equivalent to that $600. So they'll work with their contractor in that regard. They are proposing, go back to Google aerial imagery. So they are proposing to do it roughly, well, I'll kind of draw an outline. They're proposing the native planting garden would run roughly in this area here, which probably is about a quarter acre. I haven't outlined it in GIS to see exactly what acreage that would comprise. But that's where they planted, if you'll recall, they had a green grant to do some tree planting. They planted 4 trees in this area. So they're proposing to do the native planting garden around the 4 trees that they planted in this area. That same green grant had 2 additional trees that were planted right at the Hatch and Goldenwood Drive intersection. So over in this area, I believe, either this area or this area, near the regional detention basin. That's actually a public storm drain right there.
It's interesting in that image of that pond, you can actually see the problem in the pond that they were trying to address. You can see the fountain and you can see the algae growing on the surface, and that was part of their initial green grant application, was to try to fix the quality of that pond.
Yep. The one thing that we requested that they change on their plan, there's a culvert that crosses under the township pathway. So the township pathway is running right here. You can't see it due to the tree canopy here, but there's a culvert that passes underneath it, which outlets water to the wetlands. So we asked that they not plant mulch within a 10-foot radius of that culvert so that we don't get mulch washing into the wetland. So that was more or less the recap of our meeting with the Cornell Woods HOA homeowner. So now we're prepared to reconvene and discuss the additional $2,000 in funding that they requested for 2025 and our final belated applicant that came in last Thursday.
And the committee can meet virtually. You don't need physical presence, so yeah.
Correct. We could do a Zoom meeting, and our plan will be to bring this back to the Environmental Commission to award the final funding at the June meeting.
Other questions for staff? Thanks for getting that done before tonight. With all the rain and such, couldn't have been that easy to coordinate. If there are no questions, we'll look for this hopefully or we'll look for a recommendation from the committee at our next meeting.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else under 9A, 9B liaisons, the Planning Commission. Actually, let's start with the Township Board. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely. Apologies, everyone, for
You guys are going to try to tax us more for a bunch of seniors? I'm not senior. I'm sorry.
No, apologies for missing our last meeting. I was at the Michigan Township Association annual conference, learned a lot about township governance, but obviously don't like to miss meetings when you can help it. With that said, an interesting point of note, and in the spirit of Harrison, our student commissioner, the township announced via press release a couple weeks ago, and you may have seen the Facebook post a couple days ago, we are launching a youth commission for the township. I think this, we discussed it at length in the board, and while it is intended for 14 to 19-year-olds, current students in the township who want to make their opinions known about what's local goings on. I would highly encourage anyone who knows of any industrious young students to apply for the upcoming it does run on a school year basis, so you can look for that on the township website. With that said, another meeting that, or the most recent board meeting that took place on April 15th, we did have quite a lengthy discussion about the possibility of a ballot language going on related to a senior and community center. Anyone who's interested in that, I definitely do not have the liberty to speak at the length that would need to hear about it. I would highly encourage you to watch the home TV recording of that for the April 15th meeting, or the April 3rd when it was a discussion item. There was, of course, a senior community center task force that had conversations over 7 months. You're also welcome to watch those very in-depth meetings. But anyone who is interested in having their opinion on the subject shared with the board and the public, we are having our changed township board meeting tomorrow rather than yesterday. Normally we meet on the Tuesday, but we're meeting tomorrow instead. So you're welcome to join us, as I'm sure a lot of members of the public will be. So I would encourage you to do so. Directly related to the Environmental Commission, I would also encourage you to, if you had any interest in seeing what was presented at the joint meeting between joint governmental commissions that met last week, I would encourage you to look and see the video specifically related to the Red Cedar River cleanup. I think is an interesting project. Before serving on the township board, I was a member of the Ingham County Parks Commission, where we discussed at length the possibility of that Meridian Township to, this this government's credit, acting as a fiduciary for a project that is not just in Meridian Township and does benefit the region as a whole, I think is fantastic. So I am going to be asking Director Wazinski of the Parks Department for her presentation that she gave in a digital format, and I can share it with this group as well. But it is as a kayaker myself, I know that the ability to access that waterway and see it be available to residents is something that's important to me.
So you've got your own thoughts about what's navigable.
And more importantly, maybe what isn't navigable.
Yeah.
At times, if anyone has ever dragged a kayak out of a river, it's not a lot of fun when it's because of obstructions.
Thank you. Any questions for our Township Board Liaison? Hearing none, moving to the Planning Commission. At the April 28th meeting of the Planning Commission, we considered a revised special use permit for the car wash proposed for the old Outback Steakhouse site on Marsh Road. There was some objection to having a business that characterizes itself as a pass-by business. In other words, people stop to get their car washed when they're going someplace as opposed to a destination, such as a restaurant or a retail store. But in the end, the commission approved that special use permit, and there was a major source of support was the fact that the parking lot that is currently to the east of that site would be removed and replaced as green space. So the proposed development would increase green space on those lots rather than decrease, very much in accordance with our overall township goal of reducing impervious surface. The other main topic of discussion at that meeting was a proposed revision of our parking ordinance, which aims in the same direction at both reducing the minimum parking requirements, which we've already done, so not forcing people to build more parking than they think they need, but also when people do build parking, to make sure that we get landscaping in the parking that can provide some water retention, some heat reduction benefits as well. So again, those very much in line with our climate sustainability plan and aspects in our master plan. Moving from there to Land Preservation Advisory Board, since Commissioner Lee is not with us, we'll save that for next time around. Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, I feel like there hasn't been much BRA activity.
Yeah, we are going to be meeting tomorrow morning, and there'll be continuing discussions about that MISHDA affordable housing program. I just saw a memo about, kind of detailing specifics on how that would be handled. So I think tomorrow morning that'll be a major topic of discussion.
And that group meets like bright and early?
9 o'clock.
Well, that's not too bad. That's doable for someone. Questions on brownfield redevelopment? Parks Commission. What do we know about what's going on in Parks Commission these days?
So their last meeting was on April 8th, and after briefly reviewing the calendar of upcoming events for Harris Nature Center, highlighting upcoming activities, their discussion turned to the Parks and Recreation 5-year plan and strategic planning for millage renewal, which tentatively will be on a ballot for August 2026. They're starting to think about how to plan for that. And one suggestion that came up during their discussion was creating an advocacy group, something like Friends of the Millage, that would help to develop literature in support of their priorities. Director Wazinski also reviewed the Parks and Recreation budgets for the months of March and April 2025. They reached consensus on approving the updated Historic Village Memo of Understanding and lease renewal for the Friends of Historic Meridian. If you are interested in details, those documents are included in their meeting package for the April 8th meeting. Director Wazinski also mentioned the proposal that we've recently discussed at this meeting for the bioswale at the southeast corner of Marshall Park to address the recurring flooding issues. So that is on their table for attention, and they're awaiting a decision on whether or not the Environmental Commission is going to move forward with their approval of the project, which we just did, and or at least to explore the costs and details involved in that project. And then those were the major items of discussion. Their next meeting is on Tuesday, May 13th at 4:30, so that'll be next Tuesday.
Thank you. Questions on Park Commission goings on? Hearing none. Energy team.
Yeah, about a month ago, we had our Solarize meeting and had, I think, a pretty good group turnout, about 30 or so. And about half of those requested a specific on-site proposal. And so those have been happening, and now we're at the stage where they have to decide whether they want to proceed. So the deadline for the folks who have the on-site proposals is the 14th. And so next meeting, I'll be able to tell you how many people actually, out of the dozen or 15, have actually moved on to get solar installations. But so far, it's going pretty well.
Great. Questions? Green team.
Green Team, we had a very successful spring recycling event a couple of weeks ago. And just to give you a few statistics, we had 57 volunteers. 2 of them are off to my right here. We had 495 vehicles come through, and we collected 8,775 pounds of paint. Consumers Energy collected 144 appliances with coolant. We had 13 gaylords of documents for shredding that were collected. Approximately 50 bicycles were collected, and 30 cubic yards of heavy metal items were also collected, as well as hundreds of egg cartons for reuse, primarily by Titus Farms. So very successful. Perhaps the other commissioners that were present can add some additional details, but another successful event. Just real quickly, the Green Team is meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, and our next event comes up on May 17th. It focuses on planning a native meridian, and the themes for that is the Meridian Conservation Corps will have info on native seeds and plants. And John, I think it's Birnbaum is how you pronounce it, will be doing a composting demonstration that day as well. So I don't know if you wanted to add.
Well, I actually wanted to add that in the hallway in school, one of the teachers stopped me and said, "I saw you at the recycling day," and that was the first time she had gone. She was very excited about it. She said she was very impressed with how well it was organized, and she was really glad to be able to have a place to recycle her things. So I think maybe that indicated to me that we need to, at least at the high school, like advertise a little bit more when these things. Yeah, because we had several student volunteers in addition to Harrison.
That's exactly what I was going to add. We were able to get some participation. We always want more, of course. The more volunteers, the better. But
it was prom day, so
that made things.
There were some Okemos High School students.
So they came in their tuxedos and it's a formal recycling event.
We could advertise it that way next time if that happens.
Great. Anything else on Green Team? Food and composting. We heard a lot about food and composting this evening. Anybody have any further thoughts to add in that area? Oftentimes Dave Batten comes and gives us a little update. And Green Burial.
Green Burial, I did speak with the chair of the Green Burial Committee not too long ago. They are now focused on trying to get before the township board in July, and I asked, well, why so far from, now? And that's when they can get all 3 other committee members together, and the 3 of them together want to present some information to the township board. But my understanding is that they are no longer pursuing the grant that was discussed last year, so that potentially frees up money for the bioswale project that was discussed earlier.
Great. High school.
Yes, our April I feel like has been pretty busy, packed with some stuff. Earth Month, as you all probably know, and so I know at the middle school there were various activities that went on. It's more difficult in the high school with the class setup and things, but we always try to do our best. The recycling event, we had high schoolers participate in that. We had a district sustainability team meeting on the 16th. And that went really well. We're trying to kind of formulate a mission statement, a vision statement, just to make sure we have a centered focus as a group. But the more we talk, the more we bond as a group, and we're really seeming to get somewhere and are all passionate, seemingly, and are getting to the point to where we are all kind of on the same playing field. We know what each other are doing and what we want to have accomplished. What am I forgetting?
Sustainability Club toured the
Yes.
recycling center.
The Sustainability Club at the high school toured the recycling center, so the surplus store, their vermicompost, various other areas, and we were able to walk around and see the various different things that give us a lot of inspiration for our own school. We really would like to have a compost set up at some point. That's kind of a dream goal of mine. However easy or difficult that is. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Questions?
Well, I would add also that with the district sustainability group, we are, there's talk about, some of our buildings have our green Michigan schools, and we're talking about making that district-wide so that we can be a green district according to that category. And there was, you guys are also actively working with the Key Club on the updating the.
Oh, yes, another thing. So, Key Club, which is just another volunteering organization connected with Kiwanis, got a grant to improve our high school courtyard, which has continued to be a difficulty for us to maintain, to say the least. We have tried to improve it before when I was in middle school. Someone passionate always tries to do it one year, and then it's kind of a daunting task and they kind of step away. So we had a meeting on that, and then we actually started cleaning up some of this stuff. We're at the raking stage right now, so nothing too exciting. And something else I remembered, Earth Club, the small kids group at the elementary schools, we did tie-dye. And so that's been really fun. We're wrapping up the year. Just got our picnics left with the group. But that's going really well, and they keep expressing how much fun they're having, and it seems to be keeping its momentum, which is always nice.
Fantastic. Any comments from the public? Other matters, commissioner comments?
Bill. Apologies, I did want to point out, and thank you to Dan for pointing out that the presentation I was referencing around the Red Cedar cleanup is available on the packet that it was published on the township website. So I will not be sending that to you. You are welcome to look for yourself. First 10 pages of the agenda and packet from the 29th of April.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess this is a comment or maybe a question for staff, but Meridian Township has participated in the Michigan Green Communities Challenge now for several years. And I'm not sure, given the transition with staff on the Environmental Commission, if that has taken place yet this year, but I believe the deadline is fast approaching. I think it's May 15th. So if the township does want to do that again this year, which I hope they will, that needs to get in pretty soon.
Thank you for reminding us of that. I saw an email about it, but
From Leroy, didn't
Yeah,
he say?
yeah. Any other commissioner comments? I guess I'm ready for a motion to go home. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming along tonight.